As a favor to me, and of course I know to the folks out there, they'll love this one. Would you mind doing a special song?
Sure thing, brother.
'Cause you make me so like the angels. You let me walk on the water. You let me run with white horses. Jesus, my strength when all is gone.
You are about to experience Snyder Presents. We will examine the life of our Master Yeshua by discovering his ancestors, family, and friends, by reviewing rare ancient manuscripts, and speaking to those who know him best. From the Vero Essene Yahad, now experience Snyder Presents. Horn player is Lee Hayhurst. He's been with Yahad for many years and plays shofar. And he blow real good sometime, and sometime he not blow so good. But today, I am sure that the powers in the heavens could hear that and appreciate his contribution when we get together here at Vero Essene Yahad. Oh, thank you for those words, Shimkoff. I want to give you a little bit of my history really quick, and then I'm going to get into some pretty wild stuff here today. I was going to do Shavuot service, but we have to do that on Uvu because it's participatory, and we just haven't built up yet enough people that are into the Essene way and the Essene calendar yet. Perhaps next year we could do that. I certainly hope so. When I was 14 years old, I got to enjoy the ministry of Asa Alonzo Allen, A.A. Allen, whom you probably never heard of, but at the time, in the 60s, he was the premier healing evangelist, I would say, in the world. And as a youth, I got interested in his ministry. When he would come to town, he would hit the big cities. There would be thousands of people there. He would have to hire Cobo Arena in Detroit, or he also had the largest tent in the world. So he would set a tent up someplace, and they would come from everywhere. And I love that ministry. He was an old-time Pentecostal, but the thing about him as a Pentecostal, he changed with the times. And by the time of the late 60s, he had gone from the old-style Pentecostal preaching with the hymn book and all that to a very modern gospel band. And his preaching message, though the content never changed, his delivery did. And even as youth, we were attracted to him. Now, if you want to hear a little of A.A. Allen, I did an imitation of Allen, and it's out there on jspresents.org. It's called My Vision of the Destruction of America. If you haven't listened to that, you need to. In 1954, on the top of the Empire State Building, Allen had a vision, and he wrote the vision down. And it's kind of a famous prophecy now. We're hoping it doesn't get fulfilled, but it quite possibly could. I took the writing of that vision and I dramatized it. And it's about the best thing, really. Well, go out there and at the website and listen. It's only 20 minutes long. Listen to My Vision of the Destruction of America. I'm really proud of that production. But anyway, I got my call to ministry there when I was 14. I got in a healing line, long line, to go up and have Brother Allen pray for me, and he did. I got to the head of the line. The reason I wanted prayer is because my eyesight was so bad. And when he laid hands on me there in Cobo Arena up on the stage, I was slain in the spirit. And I fell off the stage down into the Cobo orchestra pit, which I don't know how far down, 8 or 10 feet. Now, I could have sworn I flew down because I wasn't hurt when I got there. But when I did, there was one man that came out of the crowd who was an evangelist. His name was Jack Harrington. I never heard from him again, but he said, "Are you all right?" And I said, "Yes, I feel fine." And he began to prophesy. And what he prophesied, I never forgot since that time. Harrington said that when you are old, you will have a significant part in the last day. Hold out until then. Well, that was the gist of what he said and some other things. I've been pretty much in the closet the last 10 years or so, and my health has been horrible, and I thought that, well, there's no way in the world that prophecy is going to come true, but in the last year, things have been happening. I don't know what's happening on Uvu right now, but a lot of hanging up sound. The problem with my understanding of the end days and prophecy is that it's outside the box. I know there are a lot of teachers today that, well, they're outside the box, but they're also outside any concept of reality. Now, we've got a real world here, and Joshua said something to his disciples, and that was, you can discern the weather from the sky, but you can't discern the future from the signs of the times. Well, what I seem to be doing is discerning from the signs of the times with the help of the manuscripts that I have been able to discover in the last 30 years that are obscure, but they are not the canonical kinds of manuscripts. They are such that I believe, and I think that it can be authenticated, that these are Nazorean scriptures. And within them are not only prophecies, but concepts that go beyond the canonical scriptures that, they've been picked over by the Catholics pretty much. We find that out just how much when, here after 2,000 years, when we put up the Annihilation of Hell audios, just how much kickback we got from that, and actually didn't get any threats this time, but we did get lots of people with ideas that are archaic, that don't look at the signs of the times, that don't look at what is happening in this world and the kind of world we have, and they're still living in, I wouldn't say the 1st century, but they're probably living in the 4th century with the Nicene Council. So, thinking outside the box, so many are also thinking inside the box, putting on Hebrew clothes, linen, going back to customs of dress and traditions of rabbinic Judaism that really have no bearing whatsoever on today. I think that's one reason why we got so interested in the Essenes, because the Essenes in their literature, that really only just came out of the ground in the last 20 years, was held back by the scholars for 50 years. The Essene literature tells us in their rules that when there is a new teacher, that the rule of the Yahad, that is the community, needs to be modified for the cultural times and for the people that you're dealing with. Yes, sir.
One question.
Go ahead.
You're talking about traditions of rabbinic Judaism. What about the tzitzits and the talit? I realize that's Torah, that's written in Torah. Are those the traditions of the rabbinical Judaism, those two things? Or?
One thing that the rules don't change is the Torah.
Okay.
So, if you've got a commandment in the Torah to wear tzitzim, what the reason you wear them is so you will remember.
Well, I thought that's what the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh was for.
Well, the Ruach HaKodesh is like the wind. It blows where it wills. If you put a pair of tzitzit on, they're not going to blow away. But I believe you can have tzitzit on the mind too. I mean, there isn't 5 minutes that I'm not aware of.
You have a visual reminder of what the Ruach is doing inside of it. Yeshua said, bring all these things back to your remembrance. But it is good to observe Torah, obviously.
Yeah.
Have something physical that you look at. When you look at them and in public, and you realize you're doing something that is not, I'll say a term Yeshua-like, you realize that you have a physical, visual example to the world of who you're portraying to be.
Well, you mean not Yeshua-like, like not whipping out animals out of the court of the nations?
No, I mean
or
like doing.
You're not being
brotherly,
polite
to your
to
neighbor,
somebody.
yes,
All
those
right.
type of things. So you have a witness that is shown to the world of who you should be, and a reminder to yourself on what kind of character that you should have. So I feel, these things are not just the trappings of the rabbinical of Judaism, but they are a physical reminder today of who we portray. And it's actually a witness to other people. If they see them and they realize who that is, then you can have camaraderie with a brother or sister that knows who
That is true. And the rule doesn't change the Torah. I mean, the rule is how you get along and what you believe and understand in the community that you're in. You're not in the first century anymore. You're not in the fourth century, but you're in this century where knowledge has exploded and the rule can change for the situation and the people. Now, here's a little example. When I was in the seminary 20 years ago, I was an old man in the seminary, but there were very young guys in there that wanted to be ministers, and there was one particular guy, only 25 years old, and he had just started out, and he was a smart ass to the extreme, and he wore every day to seminary classes an Anglican collar, and we made fun of him all the time because he wore an Anglican collar to class. Now, we all wore collars, say, to the hospital, or if we were going on some kind of mission thing, because you're identified with that. Many times I went to the hospital with a collar, and Catholics would come flocking around needing ministry, and I'd be glad to give it. But it got to the point where one of the fellows asked this guy, why are you showing off with that collar in class every day? You don't wear those kind of things into class. Well, he said, I'm going to tell you the truth. I am a wicked man. I have done wicked things even for my young age. But I have certain needs. One of those needs is to urinate on occasion. Yes?
We all could hope to rise to that occasion, yes.
Yes, that's what...
In spite of some other problems, but yes.
All right. He says, every time I go into the bathroom, I see myself in a mirror.
Mirror, yes.
And I remember what I am aspiring to be, and my mind changes again. Then, on the other hand, I was wearing the tzitzim to get my haircut one time, and the haircutter said, wow, those are some fancy roach clips you got. So, I think her idea was to, let's go out and smoke a doobie or something like that. So anyway, there's some changes that need to go on, and that's why I like the Essenes. And as we were talking yesterday, we write our rule in pencil. And Lee was looking on the internet yesterday, and he found out that saying that I am sure that we originated is all over the place. There's even a website. What's it called?
Theology in Pencil.
Theology in Pencil. All right. Would you pour me one of those? I got a cup here. Thank you. So if you have a Bible, I'm going to jump around today and continue on where I left off yesterday. But we're going to start out with a few outside-the-box kind of ideas here from the Scripture, and we're going to go to Paul first in Ephesians 3. Now, some of us don't like Paul much. I'm not much of a Paul man, but I can tell you one thing about him. Paul was a genius. And his writings are essential to us, not necessarily for his anti-Judaic, anti-Semitic doctrine in regards to soteriology, but because he's so smart, he lends to us not only the knowledge of the Greeks at that time, but he mixes it in with the knowledge of the Jews, and he comes up with some sayings that we can interpret 2,000 years later as something extremely modern and way beyond his time. And this is one of them. Just keep in mind what we talked about yesterday about the resurrections. The resurrection of the elect, the resurrection of flesh, and the non-resurrection. Okay, Ephesians 3:14. For this reason, he says, I bow my knee before the Father. Thank you. From whom every family, listen, in sky and on earth is named. You see the word heaven in your Greek New Testament. The first thing we think about is what we've been indoctrinated in the Catholic faith. Whether you're a Protestant or not makes no difference. You're still a Catholic when it comes to concepts that are biblical, and this one is heaven. That word is ziournos in Greek. It has a simple meaning. It means the sky. And it goes on, if there was a concept, and there was, of dimensionality then, a very scientific concept that came again from Greek philosophy. It would also designate dimension in our way of thinking. So he's saying that he bows his knees to the Father, from whom every family in the sky and on earth is named. I don't think that he had a concept of heaven like we do. And we've got so many people running around today that had visions of going to heaven and seeing their loved ones and riding around in sky chariots and seeing great palaces and mansions. Well, I'll leave that there. And he goes on to say that according to the riches of his glory, his kavod, there's a word that is loaded. He may grant you to be strengthened with might through his spirit in the inner man. We can take that to understand today a multidimensionality of the human being who is born again, born of spirit, as opposed to the human being who is not. We are born, as I mentioned, from Scripture, experience, and from the greatest theological minds, spiritually dead. He tells us that in the previous chapter in Ephesians. So he's talking about the inner man, the inner dimension, the spiritual man, that when the soul, which is composed of mind and body, falls off, this is the thing that comes out of the cocoon like a butterfly and is strengthened and then flies off to whatever mission it is given. And that Messiah may dwell in your hearts through faith. That word hearts in the Greek, of course, means bowels, kidneys, specifically spleen, that you, being rooted and grounded in love, may have power to comprehend, get this, with all the kadoshim. The Bible here says saints. Well, in Greek, that is hagia, which corresponds to the Dead Sea Scroll word kadoshim. That is, those who are holy, set apart by what we understand now as keeping Torah. So we've got an inner man, we've got a spiritual being here that's being strengthened, we've got families in the sky, sounding more and more like Enoch every minute. We have the ability to comprehend along with the rest of the kadoshim, the elect. And then this next part, what is the breadth and length and height and depth? Oh, in my mind, what he's talking about is multidimensionality here. Well, why doesn't he say 3? Breadth, length, and height, that would do it. But he goes beyond that to the realm of the inner man, to the realm of the families of the sky. He's talking to more than just people. He's talking to us today in lingo that we will understand because of the scientific advancements of today. And to know the love of Messiah, which surpasses knowledge. Knowledge is a purely human thing. When we get beyond the human mind, that is part of the nefesh, the soul, then we get into the realm of knowing all things. And that's completely scriptural when it comes to the teachings of Yeshua, who says, you will know all things through the Spirit, that you may be filled, he continues in 19, with all the fullness of Elohim. What I tried to get through to you yesterday was that we cannot become a kingdom dwellers in the sky unless we have that Elohim born within us. I'm not saying we are gods like the New Agers. I'm saying that we have to have an Elohim life. We have to be spiritually reborn. It just doesn't come with a sinner's prayer. To be reborn means to be born a babe, and that babe can die. That babe can die if it's not nourished properly throughout the life. And he's saying that Elohim part of us, that spirit that Adam lost when he was taken out of the garden, may be filled with fullness. The word there is pleroma in Greek. Pleroma was a technical term in those days. Pleroma meant the dwelling place of the Elohim. We read it in the New Testament Greek scriptures, but it's hidden with the word fullness. It's the same word Yeshua uses in Matthew 5, 17 and 18, when he says that none of this will pass away until all things are fulfilled. There is that technical term, again, pleroma. Where we find it most today is in Gnostic Gospels, because they don't translate it in Gnostic Gospels. They leave believe it in the Greek. If you read them, you're going to read about the pleroma. The pleroma is the place somewhere in the outer dimension where the Elohim reside, where they fellowship, and where they live in a way not that different than the way we live. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you believe that there are Elohim in the room with you? Angels? Of course, I'm not going to hear anything. But we all,
there are.
Okay. Lee says there are angels in this room.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about multidimensional beings?
I'm talking about from other people's understanding of that realm. There is an angel over this assembly, and then we have our own